On July 13, 2024, a quiet summer afternoon in the small town of Butler, Pennsylvania, would become the center of attention in virtually every household around the world. Until then, the town had been just another stop on one of many journeys that Donald Trump was doing for the United States, seeking to regain the support that had brought him to the presidency a few years earlier. The event, which was part of his campaign for the 2024 elections, seemed to be another one of his traditional rallies, packed, full of energy and fervent supporters. That day, thousands of people gathered to hear Trump speak. With his usual rhetoric, the former president addressed issues such as the economy, immigration issues, and the supposed decline of America under his successors. The crowd responded with applause and cheers of support, just as Trump had become accustomed to during years of campaigning. He was in his element, on stage, feeding off the energy of his supporters, when something completely unexpected happened. Without warning, the atmosphere at the rally changed abruptly. A sense of panic gripped the crowd, and chaos quickly spread. Until that moment, no one in the audience could have imagined what was about to happen. The roar of applause and cheers of support was soon replaced by cries of fear as the first reports of a possible attack began to circulate. The peaceful town of Butler, known for its tranquility, would be the scene of one of the most serious and unexpected events in recent U.S. history, an attack on a former president, Donald Trump, in the middle of a political campaign. How could this happen? And what led to this moment of terror? This is what we will begin to uncover in detail in this mini-documentary here at GlobalFlow. The assassination attempt on a U.S. president, while shocking, is not an unprecedented event in the country's history. Over the centuries, several American presidents have been targeted in assassinations, many of which have left deep scars on the nation's memory. One of the best-known examples is the assassination of Abraham Lincoln in 1865. Lincoln, who had just led the nation through the Civil War and secured the abolition of slavery, was shot by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Another attack that shocked the world was the death of John F. Kennedy in 1963. Kennedy, who brought with him an air of renewal and hope for the future of the United States, was shot during a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. The image of the president being shot is one of the most striking scenes in contemporary history. The attack on Kennedy gave rise to countless conspiracy theories and opened a debate about presidential security in times of intense political polarization. The history of political violence does not end with successful assassination attempts. Many presidents have also been the target of failed attempts. One example is Ronald Reagan, who survived an assassination attempt in Washington, D.C., in 1981. Reagan was shot by John Hinckley Jr. after leaving an event. The shot hit the president in the chest, just inches from his heart, but he recovered after emergency surgery. In addition to these, other presidents, such as William McKinley and Gerald Ford, also faced similar situations. McKinley was killed in 1901, while Ford survived 2 assassination attempts in a span of just 17 days in 1975. These attacks, in addition to being tragic, reveal a constant political tension in the United States, especially in times of high polarization. The attack on Trump can be seen as part of a historical conspiracy, where presidents become targets in an increasingly unstable and unpredictable political landscape. This recent event has brought concerns about presidential security back to the forefront, with Secret Service reforms and protective protocols being reviewed. As Donald Trump delivered his speech, galvanizing the crowd with promises to "Make America Great Again" and sharp criticisms of his opponents, no one could have predicted what was about to happen. Among the thousands of supporters gathered at the rally, there were no warning signs. But hidden in the shadows of a low-rise building, a lone gunman was preparing to execute a meticulously planned plan. He had climbed to the top of a single-story structure, strategically positioned directly over the stage where Trump was speaking. Positioned about 450 feet away, the attacker adjusted his aim, waiting for the right moment to strike. With a clear view of the stage, he kept his focus on Donald Trump, while the crowd remained engrossed in the former president's speech. No one seemed to notice the imminent danger, as the scene prepared to change dramatically. The sniper's position had been carefully chosen. From the top of the low building, he had an ideal line of sight not only of the stage, but of all the surrounding activity. At this distance, he was out of immediate range of Secret Service agents, but close enough to ensure his shots would be accurate. The location also offered enough cover for him to go unnoticed by those present at the event. Every detail had been thought out to maximize his chances of success and escape without being noticed. As the shooter adjusted his aim, the euphoric mood at the rally continued. Trump continued his speech with the confidence of someone who had dominated the political stage for many years. But at that very moment, history was about to change. The first shot had not yet been fired, but the pieces for a historic attack were already in place. The scene of chaos and despair was about to unfold, sending everyone present from a sense of excitement to a state of absolute panic. About 8 minutes after Donald Trump began his speech, the situation began to unfold. The crowd, still listening intently to the former president's words, did not realize that something was about to happen. Positioned on top of a building, the person responsible for the attack was preparing to act. Within seconds, the first loud sound echoed through the place, cutting through the noise of the crowd, which initially did not understand what was happening. Before they could react, 7 more similar sounds followed in quick succession, all directed at the former president, causing widespread panic among those present. Chaos ensued almost immediately. At first, the crowd hesitated, confused by the sounds echoing through the venue. Were they fireworks? Part of the event? But within seconds, panic set in. People began to scatter, while security quickly moved to protect Trump. One of the projectiles passed dangerously close, causing a minor injury to the former president's ear. He managed to take shelter behind the podium, and it was at that moment that it became clear that something serious had happened. Stunned and injured, the former president acted instinctively. In the midst of his panic, he ducked and sought shelter behind the podium where he was speaking. The Secret Service, trained for extreme risk situations, mobilized. Agents covered Trump with their bodies, while others tried to identify the source of the incident. The podium, made of resistant material, offered the necessary protection to prevent more projectiles from hitting him directly. But at that moment, the crucial question was, how serious were the former president's injuries? The crowd, in a state of shock, tried to flee the scene as quickly as possible, creating a scene of complete despair. People were pushing and running in all directions, creating even greater confusion. The sound of gunshots had stopped, but tension hung in the air. Trump, still hidden behind the podium, tried to understand the gravity of what had just happened. The perpetrator of the attack, meanwhile, was still positioned in the building, observing the chaos he had caused, while Secret Service agents worked to evacuate him safely. The agents' first move was to move Trump behind the podium, which, with its reinforced structure, offered temporary protection from the gunfire. While one group of agents used their own bodies as a shield, others quickly began to assess the source of the gunfire. Knowing that time was short, the Secret Service acted in a coordinated manner, trying to find a safe route to remove Trump from the stage without further exposing him. Each move was calculated, aiming to minimize the vulnerability of Trump, who was still bleeding from the wound in his ear. The panic in the crowd made the situation even more chaotic. While some people ducked or tried to escape, the agents' mission was to ensure that Trump got out of the scene unharmed. The evacuation needed to be done quickly and discreetly. They guided Trump through an emergency route, still protecting him with their own bodies. Even injured and stunned, Trump remained under the guard of the agents, who led him through the side exits of the stage, preventing him from being exposed to the shooter's field of vision. Meanwhile, other agents quickly moved in to identify and neutralize the threat. The shooter was still positioned in the building, but the Secret Service's response prevented further damage from being done. In the end, the evacuation operation was successful. Trump was taken to a safe location while agents kept watch over the area, awaiting reinforcements to ensure that the threat had been completely neutralized. Even in the face of a serious security breach, the Secret Service's actions at that critical moment were essential in saving the former president's life. Amidst the chaos that ensued, one of the bullets that missed the former president found another target, forever changing the life of someone who was simply watching the rally. Corey Compertor, a 50-year-old man, was among the spectators, standing next to his daughters, trying to protect them. He had attended the event like so many others, eager to hear Donald Trump. However, Corey was one of the fatal victims that day. Despite the immediate efforts of first responders and medical personnel on site, Corey unfortunately did not survive. In addition to Corey, 2 other spectators were seriously injured during the attack. Located in another part of the audience, these individuals, whose identities were not immediately released, were also hit. Although they were out of danger after emergency treatment, both suffered serious injuries and were transported by helicopter to local hospitals. One of them, according to local authorities, suffered permanent damage to one of his arms, while the other required major surgery to remove fragments from his abdomen. These injured people, like Corey, were there simply to participate in a peaceful political event, but they became unexpected victims of a life-changing incident. Their stories have brought to the forefront the discussion about the consequences of political attacks that, while focused on public figures, end up affecting the lives of ordinary people as well. The memory of Corey Compertor and the others injured will be a reminder of the dire consequences that can arise in times of intense political polarization. As soon as the first sounds were heard, the security forces responded immediately. Although the person responsible for the attack was in a high and distant position, he did not have the efficiency of the elite Secret Service teams, who were already prepared for a possible emergency. Positioned in buildings near the rally site, alert observers quickly identified the origin of the attack and coordinated the operation to neutralize the threat. The Secret Service agents knew that every second was crucial. When they had a clear view of the person responsible, one of the team members took the necessary action. With one decisive move, the situation was under control and the threat was stopped. The precision and speed of the security team were essential in preventing further damage that day. The final sound that echoed through the area was followed by a brief moment of silence. The immediate threat had been eliminated. Despite the swift response from law enforcement, the emotional toll on the public was evident. People were still in a panic, running for cover, unsure whether the danger had truly passed. Secret Service agents, local police, and other law enforcement agencies began organizing evacuations while medical teams tended to the injured. The end of the physical threat did not mean the end of the state of alert. Both law enforcement and civilians present were still in shock, processing what had just happened. The security forces' actions prevented the situation from getting worse, but the event left deep scars for those present, as well as for the authorities responsible for the security of public figures. The effectiveness of the operation raised questions about how an ordinary person could have so easily positioned himself to attack a former president. Following this incident, debates about security at campaign rallies and public events intensified, and even stricter measures began to be discussed to prevent something similar from happening again. This was the most serious attack on a current or former president of the United States since the incident involving Ronald Reagan in 1981. That year, Reagan was injured after giving a speech in Washington, D.C., but thankfully recovered. Almost half a century later, Donald Trump faced a threat of equal magnitude. This event not only impacted a central political figure, but also symbolized the rising tension in the political landscape of the United States. The attack on Donald Trump, in addition to being the most serious attack on a former U.S. president in decades, quickly became an event with profound implications, not only for American domestic politics, but also for the global geopolitical scenario. The attempt to target such an influential figure as Trump, in the middle of his re-election campaign, shocked the world and caused waves of uncertainty. For many, the attack represented more than a threat against a political leader. It symbolized the growing instability of one of the most influential democracies on the planet. The global dissemination of images and videos of the attack highlighted the political vulnerability of the United States, shaking the perception of security at public events. Allied and adversarial countries closely followed the consequences of this event. Foreign governments, especially those with strategic interests in the United States, began to observe with greater caution the growing polarization within the country. The fragility exposed by the attack fueled discussions about how such events could weaken the international image of the United States and its capacity for global leadership. Geopolitically, the attack on Trump has raised concerns about the stability of the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Foreign nations, especially major powers, view the U.S. election as a barometer for the future of the global order. Uncertainty over domestic security and continued political divisions at home have raised questions about the ability of the United States to maintain its dominant position on the international stage. Adversaries could exploit this instability to use the event to delegitimize U.S. leadership on issues of security, human rights, and democracy. Some experts suggest that the lack of initial information and the climate of widespread distrust in the United States created the perfect environment for theories to spread quickly, both through digital platforms and social media. Among the most common theories are allegations that the attack was orchestrated by Trump's political opponents, or even by sectors interested in further destabilizing the American political scene. In this scenario, it is speculated that powerful figures within the political establishment or even external agents could have been involved, manipulating the incident to create controlled chaos. Some speculate that international groups, or even foreign governments, could be interested in destabilizing the United States and using the attack on Trump as a catalyst for a domestic crisis. The idea of an invisible hand controlling political backstage is not new, but it gains traction in times of uncertainty. For proponents of these theories, the attack would be part of a larger plan designed to undermine American leadership and weaken the country's image on the international stage. But of course, government security experts vehemently deny these claims. What is very curious is how a shooter managed to position himself so close to such an important figure as a president of the United States. This security breach raises critical questions about Secret Service protocols. Despite being 450 feet away, the location offered a direct, unobstructed line of fire. The mistake prompted immediate criticism of the planning and lapses in perimeter surveillance. Security experts have already begun to debate how the team responsible allowed such a serious threat to infiltrate so close to the stage, exposing not only Trump but thousands of civilians. The motive behind the attack remains one of the main mysteries. So far, authorities have not revealed details about the shooter's background or his possible motives, but this has become a central question for the ongoing investigation. Was there a political connection? Was it an isolated act of violence or part of a larger plot? With no definitive answers, speculation and conspiracy theories are multiplying. Investigators are analyzing every aspect of the shooter's life, searching for clues about what could have led someone to attempt to take the life of a former president in the middle of a campaign. The attack clearly highlighted the urgent need to overhaul security protocols for incoming and former presidents and candidates. The Secret Service, which has historically been responsible for protecting high-risk public figures, has faced criticism in the past, but this incident adds a new layer of pressure for comprehensive reform. The fact that a shooter was able to position himself undetected challenges current surveillance and monitoring practices, suggesting that security protocols need to be updated with more advanced technology and greater coordination between local and federal authorities. Few people know this, but the United States Secret Service was originally created in 1865 under President Abraham Lincoln to combat counterfeiting, a serious threat to the country's economy at the time. During its first decades, the agency focused exclusively on this purpose. However, after the death of President William McKinley in 1901, the Secret Service's mission was expanded to include the protection of future and former presidents, as well as other high-ranking government figures. Since then, the agency has taken on the responsibility of ensuring the security of presidents, former presidents, and candidates during election campaigns. However, even in today's technologically advanced world, the incident in Butler, where a shooter managed to get close to Donald Trump, has once again exposed vulnerabilities in security protocols, raising questions about the effectiveness of the agency's strategies and the extent to which external influences impact its decisions. Now we want to hear your opinion. Let us know in the comments what you think. Was this attack an isolated act by someone with personal motivations, or could there have been a more complex plot involving political interests and hidden strategies? We want to know what you think. A hug and see you in the next video.